Your spouses and kids are going to want to engage in this, before you do, which is very common. And we would like you to take this information home with you, because you don't always know what your spouse is thinking or your kids are thinking or what they're going through with the jobs that you have. You may think you know, but if you're not talking, they're not talking. And so this is a way for them to engage and get some assistance if they're having concerns about you and your job. The other thing that we're looking at is it's not just about quote unquote PTSD. We're looking at the cumulative effects of this job. We're looking at people that have issues sleeping, people that become first responders that become obese. Your diets typically suck. You're eating fast food, you're going to McDonald's, and that's like dinner, And so we're going to be, this project is also going to be looks at issues related to diet and what you do during your off time. In fact, they've contacted a culinary arts specialist who's going to be putting together diets and recipes for first responders, specific to police, specific to fire, corrections, EMS, dispatch. You ready?
Yeah. Okay. So this project here is a state-funded grant by the state of Michigan that teamed up with the Wayne Hub and the Wayne State Department of Psychiatry. And this program is offered this is for the 5 components. It's offered to all 5 disciplines that you see here: police officers, firefighters, EMS, correctional officers, 911 dispatchers. The reason why these 5 different disciplines were chosen to be a part of this group, because we know that the word frontline often encompasses a lot of other groups, was because you guys are typically the most people outside of corrections and dispatch that are on the front line. So you guys are typically the ones that are going right into the any call that's happening. So our dispatchers get the call first, and they're often the ones that are left out of kind of debriefings and things like that. They carry a lot of trauma and stress. So it was important for us to wrap around them. And the same with corrections. Corrections often are left out of spaces that it's a really complicated space in all of our prisons and our county jails. And so we often see correctional officers don't do well, or their careers don't last as long, because they feel like they don't have places to go, people to reach out to. So it was important for us to wrap around for corrections with this project as well. We cover all 83 counties in the state of Michigan. This is super important because I think because Wayne State is in Southeast Michigan, people think that we're only focusing on that area, and we do not. We cover the entire state, so we go all the way up to the top, all the way down to the bottom, and side to side. So we go throughout the entire state, and this was important from the ground up. So when we started this project, we wanted to go and get right in and learn as much as we possibly could with our different departments. So we go in, we do ride-alongs, we're in the cruisers with the officers for 24-hour shifts. We are on the trucks with our firefighters and our EMSs. We're going out to calls. We're trying our best to understand what it is to work with a first responder. And as clinicians, we learned very quickly that all the things that we've learned and all the books that we've read meant nothing when we were working with first responders, because until we were able to come and learn the work directly as much as we can, not doing it, but learning as much as we can about it, that's when we found ourselves learning the most. All right. Okay. So again, this is more of a project than just a program, but these are our main goals with FST5. So it's designed to address the work-related stuff that you do, stress and trauma that you have from the work that you do, but also to encompass the stress that goes on at home as well. So we incorporate families, and so that covers spouses, that covers children, that covers parents if they're in your immediate space. And this was important as a part of this grant because often, as Ed mentioned, they will be the ones that reach out for you. So your people that know you the most, the people that love you the most, often will see a behavior change in you before you see a behavior change in yourself. So even if this is yelling and screaming at people and you didn't know, withdrawing, isolating, not talking in spaces that you normally do, or withdrawing from things that you normally like to do, these are the people who will recognize what's going on with you. And they're also the people that you'll typically take your frustrations out on. So we want to make sure that families, and that includes children and spouses, and any other immediate family, is taken care of through this project as well. We are tasked with developing a comprehensive behavioral health and mental health program that gives you guys access to all of these different resources throughout the state. So specifically SUD clinics, outpatient clinics, again, vetting clinicians. We have gone through and worked with these people to make sure that we're not using the same community mental health sources that you guys typically take, your neighborhood drunk guide to. These are all clinics that will know that our first responders are a special population, and they have worked with us to make sure there's a special path into services and treatment for our first responders. So going through this program, calling our phone line, will get you access to these different services throughout the state. And then last but not least is training and making sure that we are talking about resiliency. We're trying to keep you in the work that you do for a very long time. We don't want people getting to retirement or close to retirement age and feeling like there's nothing to life after that. So we want to make sure that our first responders have access to trainings, SISM trainings. If you guys are trying to create a peer support team in your department, we want to make sure that you have access to that training for free. In addition to, if you don't know how to set up a peer support team, we'll come in, show you how to set up your team, get that started. Same with communication trainings. How do you talk to not only coworkers about things that may be going on, but family members? How we do one-on-ones with spouses and children and families if you need to. All the way to how to recognize if someone is suicidal, how to talk to your community members. So this one's super important, and I think it's a little bit of a new training that we're going to be rolling out, but how to understand by seeing and being observant of nonverbal cues of what's going on with community members. So this is actually really aimed towards our police officers. So that's some of the different trainings that we have going on there. We also have FST5 podcasts and webinars that will give you guys free CEUs. So every month we do an hour-long webinar and podcast that is hosted on all of the sites where you can see a podcast, and our webinars will hosted on our YouTube page, on our website. So I'll make sure you guys get a chance to see that shortly. But you guys can get free CEUs through MCOs that will count through MCOs that you guys can use for your annual trainings. So this is super important because we want to make sure that you guys have access to education that gives you valuable information, that brings you back to the resources that you need without you guys having to take too much time going someplace, taking a whole day off work, doing those things. We want to make it as convenient as we possibly can for our first responders. Ed, am I missing anything?
That's
Go ahead.
Point. So when we talk about first responders and families, I was one of those police officers, probably like most of you guys. I communicated zero with my family about what I did every day because I didn't want them scared, right? To the point where we didn't talk at all. My dad was a cop. He was shot back in like 77. He never told me a thing about it. Not until I had several years on a job that I even knew where it happened at. It ended up actually being the first precinct I started in, which I'm kind of glad he didn't tell me about it. But so we have done a webinar, and I'll just give you my personal experience from the family one that we did. I showed it to my kids. They watched me do it. And they had so many questions from it that I never thought I'd hear from them, and it was awesome. It kind of almost did the talking for me, and it just basically they just asked the questions, and my wife got a lot out of it too. So we've already done like part of that for you. You can even just pop on and say, hey, just give this a gander, watch it with them, and see if they have any questions, see if they have any anything that's burning inside them. I know that we talked about, just extra stressors. Manisha asked a question one time, and I said, I get headaches when I drive for like more than 4 or 5 hours. She's like, why do you do that? I go, because I'm sitting there reading off every single license plate that's in front of my face. And people don't think about that. Officers, we have that constantly going on. We have, whether we're driving, whether we're in the movie theaters looking at someone, we're constantly analyzing everything that we go through. And it's just one more stressor that that your family may not know about. Why do we sit with our back to doors? Why do we like to sit towards the top of movie theaters? All these things start to add up, and they start asking more questions, and it opens the door to them understanding more about what we do every day. And that's the point I want to get across.
Awesome, thank you. So again, two major players. Although we cover all 5 disciplines, it was really the police and fire unions that helped us get this funding and this project up and running. So we always give a shout out to our POAM. Jim Sicanelli, we talked about him earlier, giving a lot of time and going straight to the legislators in the state of Michigan and requiring that we have something like this. And it pretty much boiled over to them getting responses from administration like, we need to have some place for our guys to go. We need to have some kind of resource that isn't connected directly to our department, but they can call 24/7, 365, or they can find someone through a website or right from the tip of their phone and say, I need to get help, and this is the way. We work with FOP as well, and then the MPFFU as well, and fire really stepped up to help us get into the legislative part of the state of Michigan, and they were able to help us get the funding as well. So we always want to make sure that you guys know that it is the first responder groups that are doing this. But just because we get a lot of involvement from the unions does not mean that we do not cover other first responders throughout the state. So we do cover voluntary groups as well. We also provide services for public safety, first responders who are doing both police and fire in the areas. And it's also important that you guys know we offer this to private agencies as well. So we'll have a lot of private ambulance companies ask if they have access to this and if they can tap into this because they're not a part of like a city or a county or even a union. And so we absolutely let people know that we do. And we also want people to know that if there's any other kind of like unions or bigger organizations that would like to be a part of this project and kind of believe in the work that we're doing, shoot them our way. You can let them know, go to the website, there's information, they can get in touch with me, and I can actually give you a card if you're interested. Okay, so again, what we needed to do from the ground up was learn as much as we possibly can about our disciplines. So this is some of the things that we learned about police. And some of the stuff on this list, you'll be like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, this makes sense. But let me explain to you a few of the things that we learned. So police take pride in their communities, and of course this made sense to us when we first heard it, but what we learned is a lot of the police officers live in the communities that they work in. So a lot of us will commute to the universities that we work at, but we don't necessarily live in that community. So we found that a lot of our officers did. So it took on a higher level that if a critical incident happened or something happened there, you may know the person whose house just caught on fire. You may know the person who just got into a car accident. And so it's important that we were aware that a lot of these officers are living in the communities that they work in. So it adds another level of importance to the work that they do and another level of stress. So 101, this wasn't completely unknown, but it made it very clear to us that either it's them and their cruisers by themselves or they're just them and their partners. And even if it is just them and their partners, they may have these longer kind of engaged kind of speaking with people for a long period of time, but sometimes it still stays surface. So you may never know what somebody else is going through. So that led us to a lot of people feeling alone, even when they're in a team. So we saw that most of the officers were in teams during roll call, but outside of that, they spend the rest of their like 12, sometimes longer hour shifts by themselves with nobody else. So the facing everyday life and death, you would think that that was one of the things we were like, okay, the police officers, of course they're gonna face everyday life and death situations. But this actually was one of the most important things that we learned, because what we saw while we were observing the work that you guys do is that it's the simple calls and the simple things that we never think of that could be life or death for you guys. So pulling somebody over because they ran a stop sign, or responding to a disturbance at a local liquor store with the neighborhood drunk guy that may end up having a knife, right? We don't know. And so we were able to see that these things that we thought were gonna be simple, or that the officer thought was gonna be simple, turn into something bigger. So it made it very clear for us that every time you put on your uniform, you are putting yourself in a life or death type situation. Struggles with lack of control. And this was interesting as well, because it's not necessarily lack of control on the job. We found that you guys struggle mostly with lack of control at home. So you guys spend a lot of time on the job. You were working all the overtimes, doing all of these shifts, and you get comfortable with your job. It becomes second nature. You pretty much know what you're doing. But because you guys spend so much time at work, you get home, and then you find yourself not being the boss at home. You find your spouse is doing most of the work. Your kids have events that you didn't even know was going on. It's happening and the whole weekend is gone. So you have 1 or 2 days off, and you find yourself not necessarily in control in these situations. And it brings up a lot of feelings, right? It brings up a lot of different things that are happening. So the perception of police officers over the last couple of years has not been good. Thank you to social media, Instagram, Facebook, the media, all those things. People don't always want to be nice to police officers anymore, to say the least. So that doesn't help at all. And I thought this was quite interesting, but the more we worked one-on-one with officers, the more we found out that they did not trust their administration. And they often did not go to their administration when they needed something. So they may go to each other, they may go somewhere else, but they did not trust their administration, which also included EAPs. So I'm here to let you guys know, very quickly we learned that we can't do fitness for duty evaluations and that we are not going to be a part of any EAPs. We will train EAP clinicians if they are interested in learning more of how to be culturally competent, but we are not in any space in this position to give information back to the department about the type of treatment that our first responders are getting through this program. Okay? So next up, we're going to show, actually this first responder is here in the building, so if you guys see him, give him a kudos for doing such a good job in this video. This is just a little example of some of the things that we are working with through this program.
Always felt like I was that vessel to be used to really touch my community and have an impact on other people. There was one line of duty event that happened several years back that was very traumatic and just rocked our department. We had a deputy that took his own life and took his wife's life also. And I can remember that phone call like it was yesterday. And, you know, the traumatic experience to me getting that phone call was a traumatic experience to everybody in the department. Talking to some of the guys in the department, I mean, there was questions of why, which that why is never answered in a suicide event. Talking to a lot of them, you know, there was an issue brought up. Was there something I missed? Was there something I could have done different? And even with me being that guy in the department that always reaching out to help others and talk to others, you know, my thoughts and my question was, why didn't he come to me? You know, why didn't he talk to me? You go through certain levels of emotions. You know, there was one point I felt angry, I felt sad. I felt angry that he did what he did and didn't come talk to me. And I'm sure a lot of people in our department had those range of emotions that happen. We're always in the business of helping people, and it's very frustrating when you can't help your own. Whenever you have a suicide, it triggers other experiences that you went through. Years back, I had a best friend that took his own life. So that phone call, I remember, opened up that wound also. And still today, when I go on suicide calls, it opens up those wounds of our co-worker that took his own life and my best friend that took his own life. Days following the event, a lot of people in the department, and I'm sure his family also, felt powerless. It was just hard wrap your head around why it happened. That why that we can never answer when an officer takes his own life. And it was just a absolute shock to our department. It rocked our department. In law enforcement, we are in the business to kind of take control of situations. And an incident like this, we are very powerless because we have no control. We cannot figure out why it happened, and it's become very frustrating to all of us. After the event, we knew something had to be done. There was intense emotions where we had to reach out to our union, reach out to our leadership, and get something in place to help these officers. Our leadership, they took swift action, joint efforts with the union, and we set up a CISM team. It's a peer support team, critical incident stress management team, where anytime officer goes through critical incidents, they can come talk to our team. I'm one of the members on the team, and it's been very effective, and it's been a positive impact with our department. We do defusions immediately after any critical incident that a deputy goes through. That's immediate, and we also do debriefings within 24 to 48 hours after an incident, and it is mandatory, and this helps officers to talk about the incident, to decompress, and as a team we can lead them to further help if it's needed. There's that comfort level. They know we have their back and their best interest at heart. They feel more comfortable opening up to a coworker, somebody they work side by side with, rather than a stranger who may not know or directly understand the shoes we walk in every day. And we're trying to get past that stigma of feeling like the weakest link, and that's been an issue with officers in law enforcement. You don't want to feel like that weakest link. That's old school thinking. We're trying to get them to open up and talk about the traumas that they go through so they can deal with it and not lead to that rabbit hole we all know as alcoholism, divorce, suicide. In the last couple of years, our team's been mobilized for officer-involved shootings, barricaded gunmen. 2020 in particular, we've used the team more this year since we formed the team. So it's been a big need for the team. With transformation, I normally see officers that normally would sit there with their arms crossed and not open up. It's kind of like an onion with the layers being peeled back. They start to open up. They start to talk about their stress and their trauma. And once that happens, that's where the magic happens, where you can really start to make a change and get them the help needed if they need help. And when I say magic, it's just seeing that officer actually open up and talk about their feelings. Because as officers, we hide it. We keep it bottled up, and that's what we don't want. And this team has really made a difference seeing officers actually bring it out and talk about their traumatic experience, and so we can start the healing process. And the magic is when we can heal each other and heal ourselves. We really need to continue to look out, take care of ourselves, and look out for our coworkers. You know, we have eternal scars. You know, when you get a cut, or if you get injured, get a wound, we bring attention to that immediately. We need to do the same thing for these internal scars and wounds that we don't always see. So we need to be mindful of that, and, you know, have that same mental first aid as we do when we have scars and wounds on the outside. So not only do we have to reach out to that officer. We have to make sure other officers in the department is okay as well. Being a part of the SISM team, whenever I get that phone call early in the morning or late at night, and I hear there's been an officer involved shooting, that stress and trauma sticks with me with just that first mind of whoever's calling on the other end that we have an officer involved shooting. Because you're wondering right then, is the officers okay? Is the officers alive? How are they doing? So that's something myself, I have to keep that trauma in check also when I get that phone call.
Okay.
I'll talk a little bit about my story and just a little bit about just life in general, I guess. Internal scars are real. So much just from talking to other officers and being a part of this unit and different things like that. What I've come to realize is that so much of us have guilt, and that's one of the biggest stressors, the biggest things that compound on us is, especially if you're involved in a task force. For me, there was a shooting and I wasn't there that one Saturday, and I had that guilt. Like, if I was there, we all type A personas. We all think we're, the man or the woman. And I thought that it wouldn't happen if I was there, right? I had a couple of guys that I know committed suicide. And if I would have just said those couple words to them, it wouldn't have happened, right? For me, it hit me around 17 years on the job, right? Right around where you think that you've seen it all, done it all, and accomplished everything you want to accomplish. I was wrestling around with my kids. I started getting really lightheaded, and to the point where I felt like I was going to pass out. Kind of blew it off. It didn't go away. It only got worse. Contacted a doctor. They did some tests on me, like, oh, your ears are just off balance. Your chemicals are off balance. I'm like, okay. So they had me doing stretches. That shit didn't work. Led to nightmares. I started getting nightmares almost every day. I started getting irritable with my family, my wife. And finally my wife said, get your shit together. It's time to go talk to a therapist. Sat down with them, and they were basically, I don't even know if cumulative PTSD was really a thing back, 10, 15 years ago. It is definitely now. It's more well known now, especially in our community. And he's like, why don't you list, something that really bothered you? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Which event do you want that was, had a major impact on my life? I can go on and on, right? Most of us can. If we've done the job, I can tell you've been on a job for a while. If you've been on a job for a while, you can go on and on about this suicide, this shooting, that shooting, any major event, right? And it just broke down to the fact that I just need to talk. And it was talking about everything. And it just started opening up. And I no longer had PTSD. I found the right therapist, and I was able to talk. And that's what I want to get across to you guys is it's the hardest part is that first step, right? That first step of talking. And you may not know when you're going to be impacted, right? It was an event that seeing people dead, all that stuff didn't bother me like on its face, right? It's just all of a sudden it just hit me, and I have no idea what caused it. It still confuses me to this day, and I constantly remind myself, hey, it's okay to talk. It's okay to talk, and talk in front of you guys is a form of therapy in a way, right? But really take that first step. I feel like every officer should at least talk to someone, whether it's someone from your SISM team, at least once a year, just to get things off your chest. Talk to your family more. So many of us don't talk to our family, and honestly, I couldn't believe how supportive and like my wife and family and my kids really were and wanted to talk about different things. So there is hope. If you are struggling, we have resources in place. After this, if you ever want my phone number, I'm available anytime, 24/7. And there's plenty of us out there that have experienced things that are willing to talk to you guys anytime. So please don't be afraid to talk. Constantly check on your buddies, even when you think everything's okay. Do that old car to car and spend that time talking to each other.
Afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Steve. Coming on 12 years with Dearborn. Had a pretty lucky 12 years for half a career. Pretty much packed everything into it. Started off on patrol, moved to a border crime team, been on a SWAT team for 8 years, police sniper for 5, field training officer, narcotics, worked with MSP for a while. Back when I first started patrol, worked 2-man on midnights with my buddy Chris. We formed a pretty good relationship. If you ever work 2-man on a 12-hour shift with someone, you guys become pretty close, or girls become pretty close. Shortly after that, we moved over to that border crime team almost simultaneously. We're in roll call one day. It's probably about 5 years into my career. The night prior to our roll call, we had a no knucklehead up on Tireman, which is in the north end of Dearborn, steal a Red Bull and run from patrol. No big deal, but we knew who he was. He was kind of a problem. We knew he had warrants, so Chris said, I'm gonna run up. I'm gonna go see if I can find him, because I always see him walking up and down Tireman. I was running late to roll call that day. I had been late at the gym, missed my protein shake. I'm like, let me run home, give me 10 minutes, let me grab my shake, I'll meet you up there. Sure enough, no sooner I walk in my door, Chris says he's found him, he takes off running. Foot pursuit ensues. About 8 houses north of Tireman, guy turns around, tries to grab Chris's gun. Chris is involved in an officer-involved shooting. Everything affects everybody differently. I beat myself up for a very long time for not being there, because I knew Chris isn't a small guy, 2-on-1, he wouldn't have gotten in that. And then of course, if you've ever been in a critical incident, especially an officer-involved shooting, you know all the compounding stress that comes with it. First off, you took someone's life, worrying about charges, worrying about, any career repercussions. Shortly after that, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting. We had a lady from the town center try to run over some people. I was the second officer there, the primary officer somehow got in front of her car. She tried to run him over. 4 rounds later, into her chest, I was the one dragging her out of the car, trying to save her life with gunshot wounds in the chest. If you've ever had to treat anybody with a gunshot wound to the chest, you will never forget the sound. She basically died in my arms. Her last breath, I'll never forget. That didn't affect me nearly as much as Chris's incident and me not being there, going back to Steve's guilt story. We also had an officer shortly after that who, textbook clean shoot, they respond to an apartment, lady is screaming inside, it's a domestic, he kicks in the door, she is actively being stabbed in the face. Officer shoots the assailant, puts him down, excellent job, saved her life, no doubt in anybody's mind, but he struggled with that for quite some time. Fast forward to Chris, came back to work after he was cleared, no big deal, got promoted. The stress with having a new position, also some other stress at home that he was dealing with. Day before Thanksgiving, after roll call, drove his patrol car to an abandoned building, put a mug with a picture of his daughter on the dashboard, a letter on the dashboard, went underneath an overhang at an abandoned building, and shot himself in the head. Me being his best friend, I would have said absolutely not. You could have told me 10 years prior that he was going to do that, that's how it was going to end. I would have told you you're lying. There was a point where me being so close to Chris, I could tell he was off, but I just figured it was part of everything happening kind of all at once. And it did cross my mind to ask him, are you going to kill yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? But nobody ever wants to ask that question, especially to one of your closest friends, one of your coworkers. You just don't. It's uncomfortable, and we deal in a lot of gray area that is very black and white, and I shied away from that, and I wish I didn't. But everything that they have going on at Frontline Strong here, it's a resource, and it's very, very valuable. If you make it through your 25-year career without having any sort of issues or having to reach out, then you've won the game. You made it 25 years without getting messed up. I mean, I guess that's a pretty crappy prize for a career. But also look out for your people, because there's resources out there. There's peer-to-peer teams in a ton of departments, but nobody knows your people like you do. If you see someone that might not be acting right, or they're drinking a little more, or they're not showing up to work, reach out to them, make sure it's okay. Because one of the big things that we got to worry about is stigma. You know, I ask people after I kind of made a decision I want to go this route, around my apartment, I asked them, what's the problem? What do you guys foresee? Because we were having officers with issues that were going completely unrecognized. The three big issues that they relayed to me was they don't want to lose their job and have their firearm taken away. They don't want to be looked at as someone that can't be relied upon when it hits a fan, or looked down upon by their peers. And the third and most important for me is they don't know what to do or where to go. So there's some some magnets and some pamphlets. Just grab a couple on the way back out of the room. I got some last Monday from Manisha, and they were already up in our department by dinner time Monday, because you never know, just someone seeing that might be like, okay, maybe I do need to reach out, maybe I can talk. And the last thing I'm gonna leave you with is just be honest with yourselves and make sure you guys are looking out for each other, because nobody else is going to, and we know ourselves best. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so common concerns. These are some of the things that we found out of our two major groups, police and fire, that have some of the same things that are in common. So retention and recruitment. It's hard to get people to come in and want to be excited about doing the work that you guys are doing. It used to be in a space where people wanted to be a police officer or firefighter, and they were excited about doing it and it's serious. And as of today, it's not that as much. And so keeping people from falling into different paths of burnout, it's hard in that space as well. That leads to mandatory overtime, so the people that are doing the work are being forced to stay there for longer periods of time. Sick and vacation days. I'm gonna say this and people are gonna be mad, but use your sick and vacation days. That's what it's there for. If you're not feeling well, if you're feeling run down, if you need a mental health day, take it. You need to have time to decompress. You need to have time to make yourself be there, not only for your colleagues, but also be there for your family. And sometimes just sitting at home and watching Netflix is some way to decompress, right? Or listening to music or doing whatever else works for you. Take your time. And I know it's hard, it's easier for me to say that, and I don't work in your department, so I do understand that, but it's there for a reason, okay? And the unions will support you when you need it. High burnout risk. This is not just burnout from the job, this is personal satisfaction burnout. So this is you giving so much of yourself to the work that you are currently doing that you are not giving enough of yourself to anything else. So that fishing that you used to do when you know, the first 5 or 10 years into working in the department, you used to go fishing every Saturday, every Sunday with the boys, or running marathons, or doing all this other stuff you do. You find yourself that all you have is the energy to get up and go to work every single day. You're isolating, you're not talking to your family, you're not going fishing anymore, you're not running your marathons, you're not doing any of these things. So it is important that you be mindful of personal burnout as well, okay? We've talked about this multiple times, fear of being seen weak. Everybody is feeling it, okay? And police and fire in particular like to keep business in-house. So this is in a space where people typically reach out all the time. You wanna, if folks in the department know, you wanna keep it into folks that are in the department, right? You don't want people to know outside of that. And if folks in the department don't know, you wanna keep that the same way as well. You don't want people to know what's going on with you. And there's spaces that you can do that. You can keep what's going on with you private, and you don't have to share with people in the department, but there are people that you can share that with, okay? I should be able to handle this. Everyone else seems to be okay or doing fine. I guarantee you everybody else is not doing fine. You gotta remember that you are an expert at compartmentalizing and keeping things to yourself. So that means the person right next to you is an expert at doing that as well. So you may never know what's going on with the person, okay? And then poor coping skills. Drinking, gambling, spending time with people who are not your significant others, any type of situation that puts you in a space to avoid, to isolate, to not really deal with what your problems or concern is. And we're not saying that, you know, just 1 or 2 drinks is being out of control. This is something that if you're using a substance or drinking or something like that and it's changing your behavior, bad support coping, okay? So we want you to be mindful of those things. And tap into your support systems, because they're the people who are gonna notice your behavior change before you notice your behavior change, okay? Treating first responders. So again, being culturally competent. It is important that you guys know that just because you go see a clinician does not mean you have to stay with that person. You guys get to decide, just like you pick your own doctor and you pick your own gynecologist and all these other different things, you would not stay with that person if you felt like they did not know what they were doing. Same for mental health. If you get a bad feeling, if you go there and in your gut this person does not know what they're doing and they're BSing you, do not stay with this clinician, okay? Make sure that they know, they have some sort of experience. Ask them how often they're in departments, if they're doing ride-alongs. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that just because they have this alphabet soup that they are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, right? You may end up having a situation where you get a therapist like Steve had initially. You want to talk about that story?
I feel bad for bashing maybe like
but it's
4 or 5 times,
important.
right? So, first therapist I went to, within the first 5 to 10 minutes, she was crying. Had to take a break. She wasn't used to hearing our stories, right? Something that is nothing to us, your average everyday citizen, just literally can't handle it compounded and compounded and compounded. So she had to take a break, came back in, and she said, "There's nothing I can do for you." So I left there. I was like, "What?" You know, I was lost for words. I basically left there thinking, "I'm done. Like, this is the end of the road. I'm gonna have to quit. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. Blah blah blah." A short time later, obviously, I found one that matches me. The point is you're gonna know right away, and if it doesn't match up, give it time. Even your therapist, you're not gonna click right away, but eventually you'll have that bond. The therapist that ended up, you know, basically helping me out and fixing whatever I had going on, we're best friends now. He's not even really a therapist anymore to me. We just talk about our kids and stuff. So eventually you'll find someone, and the point is it's just talk.
Got it. You want to be transparent with your therapist, but we also require our therapists to be transparent with our first responders as well. Tell them about your experience. Tell them about your knowledge. You may end up being able to make a connection with them either way. And then making sure that you are with somebody who offers your needs. So they offer in person if you need that, telehealth if you need that. And then if you're specifically going for trauma, be aware that you want someone who's an expertise in one of the methods that treats trauma, right? So you may have somebody who's amazing at treating anxiety, amazing at treating depression, but they are not really good with the traumatic things, right? So you want to make sure that someone is offering one of these different types of treatments. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. You guys may have heard of that. CBT and CPT, so cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive processing therapy. These are the most common trauma treatments. Helps you rechange and reformulate kind of how your brain works, right? And then using it through a talking process. Neurofeedback and TMS. TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And what these two treatments do is actually a little bit of remapping of the brain. So it's kind of like you get this EKG head space, and it helps the clinician to be able to isolate where your trauma is in the brain. And then you work on, like you do any other muscle, redeveloping that muscle, right? And the neurofeedback and the TMS, and actually EMDR and the CPT as well, can be really quick in the treatments in the terms of if you come in and you're ready to work the process, it's not gonna take you forever. So 8 to 10 weeks, you can be in and out of there, but I tell anyone who is listening that please be careful and be kind with your clinician in the sense that it takes time. You have to be able to come to therapy and be ready to put in the work so that we can help you get to a place like CVIS where you're not really needing it ongoing anymore, right? So you didn't get this way overnight, it's not gonna be able to change overnight. And these are treatments that you can use without medication, okay? But don't be afraid if you need to have medication. And last, let me show you guys quickly this website of ours. Hold on 2 seconds. go. Okay, so here's our website, FST5. It gives you it's so much information on this website. I'd encourage you guys to go check it out yourself. But you can find your discipline, click on that discipline there, and it'll take you to different resource options. So these are kind of animated roll call videos that are training resources that you can use. They're really good. So we re-imitate and imagine different situations that are happening from the experience that we have and from first responders. We've actually worked on these different vignettes with first responders and first responders' families to make them. Other stories that are resources that you can find here is how to use meditation, how to use breathing, how to use anything that helps you with different coping skills. You can find everything that you need on this website here. I mean, literally there's a space that has community resources where you can find babysitters, you can find daycares, you can do the whole nine. So you can click on your responders type, you can click on the different type of topics that you like to talk about, and you can click on the different type of methods you want to see it in. So articles, things like that. I think this is probably the most important part of the website for me. We did a survey that gave us that our top 5 disciplines had given us the top 5 things that most first responders struggle with. This is where it is. If you click on one of these, you're able to watch a visual of it, right? So you're able to see it firsthand for yourself, get a definition of it, and then read about how it works within first responders and how it works generally. Remember when I was telling you there's different types of burnout? You can go here and you can take these different types of quizzes. The answers are not recorded on the website, but you at least be able to get a chance to see where you are in the space of burnout. If you're having personal accomplishment burnout, if you're having occupational exhaustion, any of these things you want to be able to know, right? And last but not least, we're gonna go show you guys where the providers are. Okay, I know it's we're going over. So if you guys are looking for a provider and you want to find someone, you can. The state is on the map. On the map is split up into zones, and you guys can go here and find everything that they do, the insurances that they take, and how you're able to see a person, see your clinician. So whether it's in person or telehealth, all of these things are offered here on our website. Okay. Are there any questions? All right. Thank you guys for staying and listening to the presentation. Brochures are in the back, magnets are in the back.